of peace, and welcome to this edition of The People's Voice with Shabnam Palesa Mohamed. It is Thursday, the 29th of July, 2021, and we're broadcasting live from the African continent, specifically South Africa. Welcome to the show wherever you are in the country, in the continent, or around the world. Remember to start sharing this conversation so people have access to information, a topic that we highlight regularly on The People's Voice. And of course, before we introduce our brilliant guest and our critical topic, just to remind you that we're broadcasting on Facebook on my journalism page, Shabnam Palesa Mohamed Journalist, as well as Transformative Health Justice, the page, and the YouTube channel is SAHARI THJ. So our topic of conversation for this evening is doctors, patients, and the right to health. And our guests, I'm going to introduce them into studio now. It was with great pleasure, and I'm really appreciating them joining us this evening. Our guests are Dr. Pinky Ngcakani and Dr. Mare Olivier. Anna Marie Olivier, welcome to The People's Voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Of course, you were also expecting Magistrate Shaun Malande is probably caught up in some legal matters. And Princess Gabo Moroka will join us a little later in the conversation. She's busy hosting a children's event with the Nelson Mandela theme. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about that when she joins us later in the conversation. So doctors, let's start off with you introducing yourselves and what it is that you do. Dr. Pinky.
Hi, I am Pinky Ngcakani. I'm a specialist physician in Port Elizabeth, Gqeberha, in the Eastern Cape. My day is spent between running around, looking after patients, generally, especially COVID patients in the pandemic.
Dr. Olivier?
I'm a GP in the Western Cape, in Kuilsrivier, on the border between the Winelands and the northern suburbs. And most of my days are also at the moment treating patients with that's COVID positive, because there's not a lot of other GPs that does it.
So you see, we've got two frontline doctors today on The People's Voice. You've got comments and questions. Please feel free to share them. I'm sure doctors would love to share their knowledge and their expertise with you. Good evening, Yolandi Lako Brito. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let's start here. Dr. Pinky, last Saturday, you and I were involved in World Vitamin I Day. So thank you for joining us. Highly successful. 500,000 minutes views of the panel interviews that we did. And of course, the African continent that I hosted was represented by yourself and Dr. Wahome from Kenya. What was your experience of the conference, but also that particular panel, and sharing your experiences on the African continent?
I felt that we were given a voice to share our opinions and our day-to-day experiences, really. We're given a voice to express to other people who may be interested as what to expect in the pandemic and beyond. And also just the fact that I was there to give hope, trust, and dignity back to medicine. I felt like we were making strides. They may not be the loudest strides because we're probably not heard as far as we would love to be heard, but at least I feel like there are people out there that are busy working and doing good work that is giving hope to people again.
Absolutely. For me, it was a great sense of pride to host the African continent, but we also had the North America, South America, Asia, Europe represented as well. It was actually quite brilliant, and certainly there's going to be more events and activities as we advocate for treatment and prevention so that we can end this lockdown, which is having such an impact on people's lives from a psychosocial, economic perspective, mental health, and we'll talk about those issues in a little bit. Dr. Olivier, you mentioned just now, you're really busy. You saw about 30 patients today. And this kind of pace is really quite intense. So tell us what that's like and why there's so much pressure on some doctors as opposed to others.
I didn't see 30 patients. I consulted 30 patients.
Consulted.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm seeing no patients at my practice because there's too many COVID positive patients entering the practice. So I also have a lot of older people that's patients of mine, and it's too dangerous for them.
Mm-hmm.
In our small town, which is not small anymore, I'm the of which I know the only pro ivermectin doctor, and a lot of people, a lot of vitamin I, IV, whatever. And I'm the only doctor that will give you a script preventative and will teach you about it and will teach you about whatever you need to know. So for my elderly patients, it's sad. I I bring them in at the back door and just see them if they need me. If they bleed or they're broken, I will see them. But at the moment during this wave, I actually have to have another person there that does the same treatment, which is early treatment, which nobody else does in our town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Certainly, it
I
would make such a difference in your practice of medicine. I'm sure you miss actually interacting with your patients in person, right? And so much of that would change if we just rolled out prevention and treatment. What are your thoughts on that?
well, a lot. If I mean, if we can give everyone a script for preventative treatment, and we can reduce the possibility of them getting COVID by 84%, and that's absolute risk reduction and not relative risk reduction, then I can see patients again. I'm
Mm-hmm.
missing,
Mm-hmm.
they're missing me. And the elderly that have been confined to the old age homes and been forced to have a jab or whatever, I mean, I've seen more patients die the past year and a half from non COVID elderly patients of mine. And I think that part, they died from Takotsubo syndrome, which is stress heart syndrome, missing their family, missing
Mm-hmm.
their loved ones, missing everyone, and being locked in. My dad is in an old age home in the Karoo, and he's been locked in his room now for the past 6 weeks. They had no COVID cases before the jab was brought into the old age home. And after that, um, they were locked in. 5 cases positive, one person died, and they can't leave their rooms.
You know, it's just inhumane to be living like that, Olivier. Dr. Olivier, I think your screen has frozen. You might have to at some point put the video off, and we'll just try audio to see if we can get some clarity there with the audio connection. I want to turn the mic over to Dr. Pinky. Dr. Pinky, let's talk about mental health and how that's been impacted for patients who are living with this fear and this terror that they're going to get the coronavirus, and also the mental health of healthcare workers trying to cope under this burden and not having the tools that they need, or not being given easy access to the tools that they need, such as vitamin I.
I think there's a lot of frustration for starters from both sides, from the side of the patients and the side of the doctors. There's a lot of frustration because when you know that there's something that you can do, but you cannot do it freely, and when you know that whatever it is that you can do, it needs to be received by all the people that are existing in the world. It feels like you are smuggling drugs when you know that you're doing the right thing, especially even if you're prescribing it, there are eyes on you. Because what this condition has done, it has divided the world into two highly polarized entities. On the one spectrum, there are people within us health workers who are opposed to it. On the other hand, there are people who are, who are in favor of it. So at any given moment, even if you are writing a script in a ward, it's like everyone is watching to see what's going to happen to this doctor's patients as compared to the other. So we've become such a paranoid society in this little community of the hospital. And then patients come in, clearly they've been revved to fear to the maximum. So the minute they hear that they've got a condition called the existing virus, they want to call it anything else. Don't call, it's like when you had HIV back in the day and you felt like, if I'm positive, then I'm almost dead. The minute they hear that, they'd rather have a flu. I mean, who doesn't want to have a flu? We all want to have a flu now. Back in the day, we didn't want to have a flu, but now please give me a flu at any given moment. And I always say to my patients, you know what, anytime you so feel a hint of whatever, don't call it a flu, because the name itself, it's called severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus. That alone, it talks about a condition that is coming to cause something very severe acutely, and it's going to affect your lungs and many other systems in the process. So I tell them that the minute you have that condition, know that you have a bug with an idea to kill, and it wants to kill you immediately, like acutely. So the fear that comes, that comes with that package. And the lessons that we have learned over the months, that when you have this diagnosis and you come into hospital, you're about to, anything can happen. Patients are fearful, they're anxious. And I feel that anxiety is driving the condition even, to the grave, many patients to the grave. Then the relatives around us, they feel like we're probably going to infect them. So how do they love us the way they need to love us, at the same time protecting themselves from the very fear that they think that you're going to die, and what about them? So it's made us a people that cannot really love well. And then when we're talking about emotional expression, we want to hug. We miss hugging each other. That contact and intimacy that human beings live on, they thrive on. We can't do that anymore. You cannot even forget kissing. When I see a friend, an old friend, you have to kiss by force because you have masks on by the time you meet each other. And it's like, you know what, let's just quickly kiss each other and quickly put on the mask. So there is so much inhumaneness going on, and we all want to go back to the normal world that we've known. Talking about relatives who cannot visit their patients in hospital, you just leave your patient there with a diagnosis that carries severity, acutely, and respiratory distress, grave. You leave them there in hospital. Then the next minute, you're going to have to fetch them. You don't know exactly what's going on a day-to-day basis, which is why I think now home-based treatment or medication is going to take precedence, because really it's only proper for the relatives to nurse their own patients. They can see them every day and so forth and so on. So it's a very psychiatric world. We need antidepressants. We all need we are the whole nation is a patient, and we are all in a psychiatric ward.
That's what it feels like, and so much doesn't make sense, right, in terms of censorship of vitamin I. But let's talk about the impact of the therapies that you have been wise and courageous enough to decide you're going to use it. A couple of comments here. Phoebe Pup, good evening, ladies. Thank you so much for all the work you do to help keep us healthy. Looking forward to this panel. Renata Advocat, always great to see pro-vitamin I doctors. You're doing such great work. So let's talk to Dr. Olivier, the impact of the protocols that you've chosen to use as a doctor. What kind of impact have you seen, and why did you decide you were going to try vitamin I?
I first tried chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, the first few months of the pandemic until November. And after that, I started ivermectin. You can hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
So I first treated with we don't have hydrogen chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine. We have plasmaquine that we use. So I first treated with that with brilliant success, 100% success with patients. And the vitamin protocol and the aspirin, all that stuff. And then since November, I used ivermectin. The first studies came out in April about ivermectin, but it really became big in November last year. So on the 24th of December last year, I went to Mama's Berry Agrimark and bought a bottle of Moo medicine for my family to protect us. And we started using our mood preventative medicine the day before Christmas. And that took a lot of stress away from my daily going into work and seeing patients. Because every day, I think Pinky knows also, if you went into work, is you so, I mean, I had a patient a month ago, young guy, 36 years old. We had a telephonic consultation in January. He was so pleased to meet me 3 weeks or a month ago, and he took off his mask the moment he walked into my office, and said, "Dr. Olivier, I'm so glad I meet you finally. But I feel so bad since last Thursday. Slept the whole weekend, chills, whatever, whatever." And I'm sitting like, I don't have PPE on. I have my KN95 mask on. Uh, Please put on your mask, and then we talk further. Put him on the bed, fit, oxygen 89. COVID positive, 12:30 that night, I received his results. So ivermectin took that fear of me going to work and fearing my patients away, and fearing that I bring this germ, this thing home to my family and my loved ones and my mom. It took that away without irresponsible.
Absolutely. So important to share these very real experiences that you're having. Hein says, fantastic work, doctors. Thank you so much. And Janine van Skalkweg says, hi, ladies, as well. Dr. Pinky, what impact did you see from using vitamin I? And what made you decide you were going to be one of those doctors that was wise and brave enough and compassionate enough to try it?
I think when the first wave started, we were all ill prepared, and we can all be exempted from making mistakes, the mistakes that we did. When the second wave hit in Gqeberha, it was horrible. In Port Elizabeth, it was like we were hit by a tsunami, literally. On the 23rd of December, the 22nd of December, actually, 2020, that day I will never forget. I happened to be visited by a patient in hospital who was admitted, 72, 73-year-old gentleman with diabetes and hypertension. He came in and he was in respiratory distress that are less than 90%. And we just chatted, and he said that there's a drug that he wants to try out. But then his doctor had not managed to give it to him before he was admitted. So would I be kind enough? Actually, no, that gentleman had brought it. He had brought it with him, and he kept it in with him. So he talked about it openly, and he wanted to find out if I knew anything about it. I said I only know about it from the textbooks. I mean, from the internet. I've never ever had the experience because we don't have it here in South Africa. And he said, no, actually, I have it. So he took it out, started using it. He used it on the 22nd of December. 23rd of December, he was starting to improve, starts coming beyond 90%. And then by the 25th of December, he was home for Christmas because his sets were brilliantly fine. He was perfectly normal. He actually knows the time that he said the disease broke at this and this time. He's so confident. So I was shocked because that was not the experience that I've had managing the disease before then. From that day, patients started coming in, and we talked. I would advise them to go try it out because there was nothing to lose because of this one experience that I had anecdotally with this gentleman. And practically most of the patients who took it at that time, all of them took it late because by the time they come for admission, it's already very late. But then they would bring it from home with them and they would come with it to hospital. And the results were phenomenal. We saw patients coming back from the grave. And ever since then, I believed in the drug. I really started believing in it because even though the doses we're using at that time were far less than what is now being used currently, they did an amazing job. There's one patient who I remember so with a bit of joy mixed with sadness because his parents were admitted to another hospital in the city. They both demised, and he was begging me, please, can you please try and get my parents to get this medication? And I was like, it's beyond my ability. I couldn't. We're not even allowed to go between hospitals. So he tried the medication. It took him forever to recover. I mean, I think he stayed in hospital for about 3 weeks. And eventually, when it left, it just left him. And when he went home, he kept calling. In actual fact, he sent me a message once and he said, "Thank you for saving my life, because my parents would still be alive had it been for this drug, if they had received this drug early or in time. But then they didn't receive it. He's the only one who lives in the family, who was left in the family that was severely affected. And he lives to tell the story that he will recommend the drug everywhere he goes, because he's got the genes of both parents and he's the only one who lived. Both of them passed away. And had they tried the drug, who knows what could have happened. So it's stories like those. And when I give them the medication, I'm doing it practically for every patient that I've lost. It's like for every life that I've lost to this disease, if there is anyone I can save, it's like I'm saying to those families, the relatives who have lost their patients, we are doing something good in the world. Yes, you may have lost, but your pain and your grief, we are trying to appease and to soothe by making sure that many other lives are won. And it's not something that anyone can tell me to stop using, because I just cannot. I can't. I've seen what it does. I cannot back off right now.
Absolutely. And of course, over the last year and a half, it's been very painful and disturbing and in fact outrageous. The way that doctors write and commitment to the Hippocratic Oath, there have been attempts to stifle it, to tie your hands behind your back, to not let you make decisions in terms of your own patients and what's best for them. So certainly now that we know about vitamin I and multi-drug therapies and nutraceuticals and all of that, how do you feel? I mean, are you feeling liberated? Are you feeling more comfortable? Are you feeling like you're never going to go back to that space where you're going to listen to the WHO or some regulatory authority telling you that how you should treat your patient, Dr. Olivier?
Well, I lost every belief or respect or anything I had for all our, for SAMA, for MPS, for HPCSA, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
They are attacking us the whole time as anti-vaxxers, where we're not anti-vaxxers, or anti-jabbers, we pro vitamin I. So I've been on all these. You pay a lot of money. Dr. Pinky can affirm every month for MPS and Salma and all of these guys to be behind your, or to back you up in the studies, and we've seen it in our practices. And now they just say this is nonsense. You can't give it. You must, as I said earlier to Dr. Kat, is I've stopped my subscription to News 24. I don't listen to any radio station anymore because you don't get any real information anymore.
Mm-hmm.
People are forcing you. I mean, I have people that my neighbor, he he was forced to go for a jab because his children forced him. I asked him, when did your children force you to do anything else in your life? Never.
Mm-hmm.
But so
I mean, that certainly is happening, that people are being coerced and there's no informed consent. And it's quite heartening that the South African Human Rights Commission has now come out and said, if you are being threatened with eviction or with losing your job, in order to force you into taking this injection, you need to contact the South African Human Rights Commission. And finally, there's a ray of light there that an organization like that is going to take a stand for the rights, the human rights, the constitutional rights of the residents of our country. Of course, we need to give them all of our support. Dr. Pinky, Dr. Olivier has just mentioned MPS, which sent out that letter, which to me looked like a threat in many ways to doctors, right? Subliminally couched, indirectly couched, but basically saying, we're going to keep an eye on you, and if you prescribe more than other doctors, and you might not have cover, and quoting the research, false research, no context, not quoting the newer information, but just with this agenda to push doctors into a particular position where they feel constrained. But of course, doctors are not having any of it, right? We're probably going to look at other options then, because that's what they're forcing you into, and we're not going to be constrained by them. What are your thoughts on these tactics that are being used by these stakeholders?
Yeah, we paid them. We put too much trust into people. We outsourced our logic. We outsourced our ability to feel and think. And now we feel we depend on them. And I think we gave them too much power, because anytime you rely on somebody else to save you, to rescue you from this unseen and unmet enemy, sometimes we tend to build possibilities, and then we start paying for these possibilities. At the end of the day, no one is going to change the fact that there is a beautiful drug that is there, brought by human nature. No one is going to change its mechanism of action. No one is going to change the fact that it really does work, and it targets a very critical part in the viral makeup. No one is going to change that. We can have conference upon conference and webinar upon webinar and hide it and lie upon it or do whatever. It's not going to change the fact that this drug works. One day, somewhere in history, we're going to be so exposed for being really menacingly cruel to the people that entrust their lives in our hands. And we'll have to answer to those grandchildren. Every time you see a patient, a woman that lies in bed 6 or bed 12 or a whatever ward, those are names to us. There are people in the list of patients in the ward. But to the relatives, those are faces, those are fathers, they've got relationships, there are relationships in the families. There are people who are doing something for their households. There are breadwinners. There are people who are loved. And I wonder every day, if my mother were to be sick today and end up in a hospital somewhere, what kind of a doctor is she going to get to treat her? If now we need to worry about what kind of a doctor is going to offer this medication versus this other medication, you wonder what kind of a world we're going to leave behind for our children to live in if we're going to be quiet at this point in life. So whether MPS does whatever they want to do, whether I'm taken out of an insurance, a medical insurance that I'm part of, whether they hike the premiums for whatever the benefit, it's not going to change the fact that this one drug that we did not even design as such, that is found in Mother Nature, it's not going to change the fact that it works. And I really battle to put my hand and bury my head under the sand and wish that it disappears. I can't. I really cannot. I mean, we can meet with every other person and we can try and plot against this medication and force whatever other desires want to enforce. It's not going to change the truth. I mean, the truth is going to just stay there. It's going to just stare at us and look at us and just stare at us until this critical, important person dies, and maybe they fall very sick, and then we're going to want to try it. The one thing I'm not going to do, Shabnam, is to keep quiet and say that we are going to join the gang of people who are going to say, now we are no longer doctors treating people, but we are people who are just going to watch an acute condition turn into a disease that needs to be palliated. I just cannot do that. I cannot sit with myself and know that there's a medication that works. I've tried it, I've seen it, I was introduced to it by a patient for that matter. And here I am saying that it doesn't work. I mean, really, I cannot. So whatever's going to happen to me, really, at this point, I'm like, if it's a license to kill, take it. Because I thought it's a license to heal. I'm going to say that again.
Right.
If it is a license to kill, I don't want it. Because all I know is that when I was taught medicine, when I was trained, I was given, help this patient. Is there a problem? What is the problem? Where is the problem? Treat the problem. I can't do everything else and then I say there is a problem, it's called this virus, and then at the end of the day, you're sitting in front of me as a patient and I make a diagnosis. You've got a viral infection of the pandemic type, and then I come and write a script that has nothing to do with the pandemic virus. I just cannot live with myself. I really can't.
Absolutely. And of course, we know that it's a medicine that's effective, safe, and cheap. There's absolutely no reason except for the other agenda, which we'll chat about in a bit. And a couple of comments here. Bianca Bronze Rohan saying, indeed, that MPS did issue a threat. So glad you brought this up. Heinz says, I just came from a week from IVM treatment while being at home. I feel 99% better. Same time, my wife was admitted to hospital. She had no IVM treatment, 11 days in hospital with bad service. Of course, certainly an issue. I mean, what therapeutics exist in, especially in some of our public hospitals where they don't even have basic or even the clinics access to things like Panado. How are people being treated, right? Ventilators only, that's not treatment. Bianca also says, Dr. Pinky, I loved your video. Thank you. My doctor has not had a single patient hospitalized in this third wave because all patients were started on IVM early and on the right dosage, right? That's the secret, and the protocols exist. So, of course, we're talking to non-ivory tower doctors here, but the ivory tower ones are certainly listening, and we've got a very interesting comment to discuss here in a sec. Henrietta Box says, Dr. Pinky, thanks for speaking up and for caring. Bianca says, MPS is requiring doctors to give a consent form to anyone wanting the safe drug. 40-year-old drug, 3.7 billion doses to humans on the African continent, has been used for Zika and dengue, by the way. So everyone who came out there onto your television screen and lied and said that it's toxic is not anyone you need to be trusting. Long-term safety proven, Nobel Prize for Medicine, Professor Satoshi Omura, God bless him, and Professor Campbell as well, listed as one of the WHO's essential drugs and called by the NIH as astonishingly safe. Go and look for the documentary called Mektizan, Source of Hope, and go and see what you learn there. Beulah Lowe Boa says, I'm so proud of seeing you speaking about all of this. Thank you, Beulah. Heinz says, thank you, Dr. Olivier, for the courage and commitment. My own house doctor was not willing to help. The public are thrown to the wolves to fend for themselves. This is an indictment on doctors. In some ways, I think the polarization is healthy, because if the public is going to see who are those doctors that they can trust and who are those doctors they should actually stay away from. So here's a very interesting comment that came up earlier. This is from someone called Anton Bester. And he says, did you put your research up for peer review, doctor? And where was it published? Would any one of you want to respond to that comment?
You know what? There are we have been going through this week after week, week on and week after. The one thing that this Mr. Anton must try and do is to, as diligently as he has been pursuing every other piece of information about every other drug that is available here, he must just go in and check all the meta-analysis, all the clinical trials that have been done. Google Andrew Hill, Google Tessa Lowry, Google FLCCC, and read for yourself. There are articles there. There are all these articles that are sitting there. Read all the bad journalism that has been about ivermectin. Sense it in your spirit, the language, the tone of voice that they use. Read all the articles that are affirming the vitamin I, and see if there's anything that you feel. Because at the end of the day, patients are going to have to be discerning at the same time. They need to really start learning how to discern. Here I am, I've been a practitioner treating my patient for every other condition all throughout life. I come to this one condition. We have no medication for it, so it seems. And somebody comes and says, let's try this one thing out. We try it out, and lo and behold, it works. And then somebody else who has not even tried the medication comes and tells us that they need more information. We will find the more information when we've got the luxury of time. But right now, let's not forget we're in a pandemic. Let's not forget we're in a pandemic. And a pandemic is going to demand for us to do things differently, just like we're allowing everything else. When we started off, nobody told us to not prescribe vitamin C or vitamin D. Nobody stopped us. When we were writing all these flu medications, no one is stopping people from writing flu medications. Everything else is permissible, but that's just this one thing, just this one drug. But you can write anything else you want to write. You can write colchicine if you have a gut feel that it may work because it's an anti-gout medication or anti-inflammatory. You can write it, and no one is going to come after you. You can write anything you want to write, but just don't write this one thing. Then I have a problem with that.
Absolutely. Dr. Olivier, would you like to respond to Anton Bester? Did you put your research up for peer review, doctor, and where was it published? I've hosted so many doctors and scientists on my shows, and I have never seen that question asked of a male doctor. Let me be honest. Dr. Olivier, how would you like to respond?
Okay. I didn't have time to do a study or a peer review study. So I did a clinical study on my patients, and I treated them with plasmaquine in the beginning, and since December I treated them with vitamin I, and yeah, I haven't had a lot of patients in hospital, and I only lost 3 patients that contacted me too late in December. So yeah, I don't have the time for peer review studies or double-blinded whatever studies. There is none of that studies for the jab or remdesivir or any of the other things. So what I see in my practice with my patients is vitamin I works fantastic if it is started early. Later on, if it started in the second phase, like Dr. Pinky knows, um, if other doctors treated them like it's a normal bronchitis or whatever with a normal regimen, then it takes a lot longer to get better, but they still get better.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But this is someone that's obviously being quite sort of tongue in cheek and disrespectful, I think, in sort of saying to you, well, have you done the research? And we're saying to this kind of person, you should do independent research as well and not just believe what you're being told by the big pharma controlled narrative, and that's where this person is coming from. They're obviously brainwashed by the narrative, and there's so much of it out there that sometimes we feel sorry for people who are unable to discern. And of course, Google is not the best place to find information, because Google in itself is, got funding that ties it back to the pharmaceutical industry. The Trusted News Initiative funds a lot of the media around the world. And so it's very difficult to have journalists who would come out there and speak the truth. And then that results in people like Anton, who can, come onto a program and say, well, did you put your research up for peer review, doctor, and where was it published, right? Okay, the gods of science and knowledge, as Professor Paul Marek would say, but the truth will always come out. Dr. Olivier?
I've already been attacked and been quoted in News 24.
Yes.
I was one of the first doctors in March 2020 to educate people about COVID when no one else even know the word COVID.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and it was so scary for me because I'm not a camera person or anything like that. But it seems like I'm becoming better, more scared but better. But speaking more, I've been attacked like a month ago or something because my profile pic was I didn't take the jab. Ask me why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was my personal profile pic. I didn't take the jab. Please ask me why.
Now, what's the problem
And
with that, Dr. Olivier?
after that, I got this huge, because your profile pic on Facebook becomes a open thing, and after that, I became attacked by social media and the dink scrum Afrikaans intellectual, mostly men, but there was other people also. And then Anay van Sail posted, or she wanted to have an interview with me on the Friday. And I said, I'm not a social speaker. I'm not someone that can speak in front of, I'm starting to learn. But anyway, still not relaxed, but
We're very proud of you, Dr. Olivier.
Thank you, Shabnam. And then I said, please phone our media girl, Dr. Kat, and she was also in this Afrikaans newsletter quoted, and I was this anti-vaxxer, Afrikaans speaking doctor. pro-ivermectin animal medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, uh, my practice is open, as I said before, 15 years. I have my Facebook page of my practice for the past 10 years. I had 1,800 followers. Since that article of Anae van Sale, my Facebook page went up to almost 4,000 likes. And and I sleep at night, and that's what I do.
Well, you know what? There's been positive that's come out of it. And I want to talk more about the role of the industry, the public health authorities, and the media. But I think we might have Princess Gabo Moroka with us. Are you with us, Princess Moroka? All right, can't really hear anything there. I've been trying to add her to the stream, and we seem to be having a slight challenge. Please check your WhatsApp, Princess Moroka. We're hoping we can add you on, or we'll have to bring you on again for a separate interview. Can you hear anything? All right, not sure what's going on there, but let's talk about the role of censorship and what that's done to the practice of medicine, and the right to health of people. These are more than patients. These are human beings. What has this censorship done to their people's right to health, to the right to access information, to the right to mental health, to know that there is prevention, there is treatment, you can survive this. Over 98% of people do. And how do we challenge this narrative? How do you challenge this narrative and the misinformation that's out there constantly, Dr. Pinky?
I think one needs to be deliberate. The thing is, there are very few of us who are willing to come out and speak openly about what they believe about the drug. And therefore, there are very few people who are willing to be fixing these mistakes or these deliberations that seem to be intentionally placed at provoking and threatening anyone who wants to think other than the narrative, the popular narrative. So there's few people who are busy working with the media trying to correct and remove the misinformation, and we salute them. I mean, I'm talking about Dr. Dr. Prof. Natim Dladla, Professor Aldos, Colin, and many others who are really standing and putting their necks out and trying to correct the false narrative that is so bitterly steeped against any mention of the word vitamin I.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that if we carry on like this, if we hand over our knowledge and make pharmaceutical companies stewards of knowledge, and then I'm going to start doubting the whole thing. It's going to make me doubt the whole establishment, starting from pharmaceutical industries, their genuineness about bringing curative medications. I'm going to start doubting the academia, because if the academia itself is not spontaneous and involuntary, if they are under voluntary control, if they are under somebody else's will and not autonomous as they ought to be, then I'm going to start wondering about the syllabus of medicine to begin with. Who is in charge of the syllabus? Then are there any other medications out there that have been oppressed because they may just be too good, but yet too cheap and not profitable? It raises questions like that. And then you wonder what would the world be like had it not been for any other external influences other than people who are just sheer scientists wanting to discover and serve the humanity to the best that they can. So for me, then it also worries me that governments are unable to source out people who can really help them out to protect their voters. Because at the end of the day, the people who are dying are people who are going to have to vote for the government in. At the end of the day, we're gonna go back to the elections. We're gonna be deceived again. So the quality of our votes, what do they mean? What does it mean to build a nation if the people who are the ones who are supposed to vote the government in are the very people who are going to be allowed to be hoodwinked? I'm so disillusioned. I sit here and I ask myself this question. So what is academia? Where are our South African academics in these beautiful universities? I mean, they lectured us. I'm here as a doctor. Mare is here as a doctor because she comes out of the hands that trained her. But what else were we not trained to do? What else were we failed in realizing and becoming? If now one disease is going to expose so much from the high-ranking pharmaceutical company to the highest knowledge, sources of knowledge, stewards of knowledge, for the protection of those who know less than what we are supposed to know.
Mm-hmm. Such important points there. Thank you, Dr. Pinky. And we're very delighted to welcome Her Highness Princess Gabo Moroka to the conversation. Thank you. We are very grateful that you made the time to join us. I know you were busy hosting an event. We're grateful for you joining us on The People's Voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Palesa. And greetings to both Dr. Pinky and Dr. Mare, as well as all the viewers. Thank you. I'm humbled to join you this evening.
It's an absolute honor. I know you were hosting an event with children and you're still making the time for another very important cause, which is the right to health. Now, you, of course, have been treated using vitamin I. Can you share your experience with us?
Well, I had COVID at the beginning of the year, so it was during the second wave, and of course, one would follow the protocol that's given, that we all know, to take your vitamin C, D3, and zinc, and as well as in steaming and so forth. But unfortunately, a few days into the pandemic, I really was not becoming better. And I decided to consult my doctor. I think they gave me steroids and cortisol steroids and antibiotics. And still, I was not improving. I had to go in again to get the same treatment, but through a friend, they were worried that, it seems as if your health is deteriorating and we need some sort of intervention. And this friend then introduced vitamin I. Of course, one would be skeptical at first, which is a natural reaction. But when you are in that situation, when you have COVID, you would go to extra lengths just to save yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It really takes so much of you, mind, body, and soul. So they delivered that the vitamin I for me, and truth be told, that was the turning point. That was truly the turning point. We kept a journal together with this friend to note each day from the day that I took ivermectin, which was only for 5 days. And by the 5th day, I was telling a different story. So my sentiments about this whole issue is that, coming especially from a background of traditional leadership, where obviously we are leaders of the most disadvantaged, the people who are always last in everything. If we have things like or interventions that can be explored, that are available, why do we not entertain them? Why are we not? I mean, there's nothing wrong with looking for alternative interventions. Just as, and when I speak about vitamin I actually always compare it to cannabis. when the debate about cannabis started, very, very little, acknowledgement, and the sector and the public in general did not really want to, or the powers that be didn't really want to entertain it. It took a former MP who now passed on, may his soul rest in peace,
Amen.
to make that scathing presentation in Parliament. It had to take that much effort. And today it is legalized. Now, this is, vitamin I is totally different because it is acknowledged. It is by the World Health Organization. It's won a Nobel Prize. I mean, why then is there such a pushback when we save millions and millions of people? It is very good, even as a prevention measure. So if we were to take it to our people, because the reality is that the masses are the ones who suffer the most. Those that cannot even afford to have the liberty to go to doctors and specialists and hospitals. Yet we do know, it's a fact. We must also acknowledge that our health system, before even the pandemic, was burdened and has challenges. So then why are we not open to say, how do we put our hands together to find solutions that work for our people? So I truly think if we are just, it is only fair to be open to other alternatives in seeking solutions and saving lives.
Absolutely. We've made certain strides in terms of access to vitamin I, but until our masses have access, we're not there yet. It's for all of us. It's not for some of us to have access. Those of us that can afford to go to doctors and get scripts in a time of severe economic destruction, cannot even afford food, definitely can't afford to go to a doctor and get a script and then go to a compound pharmacy. So no, we want rollout. Like what happened in India was just dispensing via mobile clinics. And we saw the result of that. And certainly we're living in a continent which is rich in terms of resources, but categorized as low to middle income as a country. It's bizarre, right? And we know what that's about. And so certainly our people need access, and particularly to repurposed medicines instead of novel drugs that are expensive, that tie us up in greater debt. And I know initially you mentioned that you had some skepticism regarding this medicine. Is that because you didn't know enough about it, or because of the narrative that was out there trying to make it seem as if you shouldn't go anywhere near this medicine?
No, I think it was because of lack of knowledge, if I can say so. I mean, one had never really taken much interest before contracting or getting COVID. So when you are in a certain situation, and I'm one who would want to do the research, understand what this product is, and to have thorough knowledge about what you are consuming. So it wasn't really that because of the theories that are there, but it's always wise to know what you are doing, why you are doing it, what are the effects, so forth, and you weigh between the risk and the gain.
Absolutely. I want to take a couple of comments and then let's talk about natural and indigenous medicine. Always such an exciting and interesting topic to talk about. Daryl Hardy says it takes courage these days to demonstrate true compassion for people. Courage is contagious, and this will echo into eternity. Thank you, my very good friend Daryl. Sonia Shell, why do you promote medicine if there are injections that can prevent COVID-19? That's a whole other discussion, Sonia. But even those who propose only the injections that the masses still don't have access to anyway will tell you that they may prevent severe illness, but they don't prevent infection and they don't prevent transmission. And of course, they're super expensive and tying our countries into debt. Johannes Brain's experimental injections are not approved by the FDA, only for emergency use. So vitamin I has already got a track record. SAHARI even says on their website that injections are not risk-free. So there's double standards. Love you. Thank you, my brother. I mean, that's such an important point, that they only have emergency use authorization because they refuse to recognize vitamin I legally. If there is a treatment that works, the injections can't get emergency use authorization, and therefore would have to go through proper trials and safety protocols and produce all of the toxicology and all of those things. I mean, we know these trials are only going to finish in 2023, right? So that's the legal position, and people keep asking, why is vitamin I being blocked? It's because of that. It's because it serves the profit agenda that has set up these pharmaceutical industries for decades to come. Corbin de Klerk is explaining to Sonia about vitamin I. Thank you, Corbin, for doing that. Jean Herborn, thank you, Dr. Olivier and Dr. Ngcakani, for being brave, living your Hippocratic oath. This will go down in history books. If you want to lead the orchestra, you have to turn your back to the crowd. Wow, really beautiful saying there. Daryl Hardy also says, well done, Princess Moroka. Please keep telling the truth to all, because the truth shall set us free. And he's hashtag courageous Princess Moroka. Really beautiful there. Let's see a couple more comments. Herd immunity. Janine van Skalkbeek raises. Bianca Bronze, Rohan. I was sick to the point of what felt like death in the second wave. Managed to get hold of IVM on day 10 with great difficulty as it was banned. I made a significant recovery in 24 hours after the first dose. Certainly very interesting to hear these experiences. And we do have some people trolling in the comments. I don't know why people have a right to choose that the medicine that they actually want to use. Kubin also saying, we're so grateful to these doctors. You're not alone. Thank you also, Shabnam, for going above and beyond in ensuring amazing media coverage. May the Almighty continue to bless the works of every person who stands for what they believe in. Desna Aston, proud of you, doctors. It's about the patient, no matter what that may be. And you have shown that your concern for the patient is first. Sandra Cupido, thank you, Dr. Olivier, for all you've done for our family. No matter what time or day, she will always go the extra mile for us. It just shows what an amazing person she is from the Cupido family. So certainly some beautiful comments. Alta Anton Badenhorst, ek is so trots, let me test my Afrikaans, om vrouwen soos julle te sien. Dankie, Dr. Olivier, dat jy standpunt inneem oor die jab. So thank you for that. And we're going to get rid of the person who's trolling the comments here unnecessarily in what is a very constructive conversation. Let's talk about indigenous and natural medicine, right? Africa, for example, we've got Umhlonyane, Lingana, Artemisia. India is very famous for curcumin, which we call turmeric, and neem, very effective antiviral. We've also got Sandalandia, I think also called Kankabossi. So we've got all of these indigenous natural medicines, which are by and large discredited, censored, or they expect super high standards for evidence on these particular medicines. But what would it do for health in our country, in our continent, and in our world for indigenous medicines to be given the same status and for people to have the choice of what they want to put into their bodies? Princess Moroka.
Thank you very much, Palesa. Let me first start by maybe posing a question that the very drugs that we take, what are they made of? Because they are most certainly made out of the very plants that we are talking about. And secondly, this is a conversation that I think is picking up slowly within our country about indigenous medicine. And yet we do know that this is medicine that has been used over centuries, and it has proven to work. I mean, in the African culture, for instance, there is no household that doesn't know certain medication that they use, either for the cold, either for arthritis, but we always have those medicines or plants that we know assist in A, B, C, D. Now, what needs to happen is, especially the sector of traditional leadership, which I come from, we need to take a stand in advocating for indigenous medicine to be equally recognized. Yeah. We know that when COVID started, there was a huge hype about umhlonyane, which is a plant tree that we have, generously so. And most people, especially in our rural areas, were taking umhlonyane, drinking umhlonyane. But also, you are very right. I mean, throughout, there is no one, and I think this I will stand to be corrected, but almost all households now depend on ground raw ginger, raw garlic, lemon, turmeric, onion. These are just natural plants that we take also in the treatment of COVID and as a preventative measure. So whether we like it or not, we have to acknowledge that nature is nature. These things, these plants were there, are in existence for a reason. What we have to do as human race is to acknowledge that culture also plays a very critical role in our daily lives, be it health-wise, be it in our socio-economic trajectory. We have to have those conversations that are uncomfortable. And I mean, Palesa, if we were to have these indigenous plants free, we can even plant them in our own yards. Can you imagine what it would do for those people, the masses that do not afford to go and buy vitamin C, that do not afford to go and buy vitamin D3 or zinc? Because the reality, the masses do not afford to go and buy vitamin C, D3, and zinc. So yes, these are conversations that we need to have, and we really need to emphasize the importance thereof.
Absolutely agree with you. In fact, when we, on the Africa panel of World Vitamin I Day, we had Dr. Wahome from Kenya also talking to us about the importance of highlighting and advocating for natural and indigenous medicines. Couple of comments here. Corbin de Klerk, IV is also being used since 2018 in the treatment of breast cancer. Peer-reviewed medical journals are also available. It's a miracle that it's helping in the treatment of CVD and other diseases, which it wasn't initially intended for. Rather stand in awe and be part of the solution. Of course, that's the whole purpose of repurposed medicines, right? They may not for the original that it was intended for, but doctors and scientists realize it has an effect on something else. And certainly the signals even for vitamin I, for cancer, and for HIV. And that's part of the reason why it's being obstructed so badly. Certainly it has implications in the profit margins of the billionaires who tend to control or try to control health and medicine. A couple more comments. Let's take a couple more comments here. Cools, dude. Vitamin I is great. I've been on it prophylactically throughout the third wave. No COVID for me and no experimental gene therapy either. Corbin de Klerk also, for interest sake, if you properly start researching IV, you'll find trademark treatment protocols for certain diseases such as muscular dystrophy. As far back as the early 1990s, the information exists. We know that it works. Sabelo Dau Duna Sibanda, thank you for the great show. You're welcome, Sabelo. Is there a condition known as COVID anxiety? I read the story some time back. CDC blames COVID anxiety for adverse reactions, 164 times more people fainting after getting the injections compared to the flu shot. Dr. Olivier, I see you nodding there. Talk to us about COVID anxiety.
When you get the diagnosis of COVID, the anxiety is I don't even know how to explain it. I've never seen it in my 28 years of being a doctor. When you tell someone they have cancer, like now, this pandemic, when you tell them they have COVID, the anxiety is the first thing you have to manage. It's like we're going to die. My parents are going to die. My family is going to die. Everyone is going to die around me. With cancer, I always, in my years of working as a GP, with cancer, it's always like patients have this bag of hope that they get with a bad diagnosis. But in COVID, the anxiety is, Pinky, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's like up there, the anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. And it certainly has an impact on patients' mental health and ability to recover, because if you're so anxious, that has an effect on your immune system, your ability to think clearly, to explore, alternatives in terms of medicine, and all of that. Neuro-linguistic programming is coming from the mainstream narrative, where we're just being forced into fear all the time. And we always say, unplug yourself from that system, get out there, go get some sunshine, and talk to people who have information that would be very useful for you in terms of your health. Tesna Aston says, I grew up with a gran who only gave us indigenous medicine. If you had a cold, you had to go outside and pick leaves for granny to make the tea, etc. Let's see a couple more comments here. Janine from Skalkwake, my grandfather too loved natural remedies and homeopathy. Deborah Moller, thank you, Dr. Olivier, for the teleconsult for a very ill lady who is HIV positive, has liver disease, CD count of 5, and into her 8th day of C19 suffering. Your script of vitamin I and other medications turned her life around. She's not felt so good in such a long time. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah Moller, for that positive feedback. It's so good to hear these stories and people increasingly sharing them to counter the narrative that's out there. Let's see. Sabelo also says, Sabelo Sibanda, is CDC not hiding behind the finger to blame anxiety for adverse anxiety, more so that days are happening to healthy people who chose to get jabbed? So I'm not entirely understanding that question, Sabelo. If you can please, right, let me just mute the mics there. If you can just rephrase that for us, that will be very, very helpful. So there's a question here from Yolanda. What would you recommend to use to protect yourself against C19? Dr. Pinky?
Yeah, when we're talking about this IV and or vitamin I, we're talking about a medicine that takes care of a human being against the virus from pre-exposure all the way to the long haul. So it covers practically the full spectrum of the disease process. So when you want to when you want to protect yourself, if say you are a person who is high risk of contracting the disease or of dying when you have contracted the disease, you're more likely to warrant being put on pre-exposure prophylaxis. There are recommendations, there are dosages that we know that we have to adhere to for pre-exposure prophylaxis. So a lot of health workers who want to use this medication will take it in a specified format, and they would use it for pre-exposure prophylaxis. There's also post-exposure prophylaxis. If you get in like around a person who is already infected, then we can take the medication, the same treatment, but at a slightly different dose or at a slightly different regime. You take it for post-exposure prophylaxis. I want to pause here and say, even if you have taken the jab, you are still able to contract the virus. So I see a lot of patients who you've taken the full, complete jab, who are fully vaccinated, finding that they still need to protect themselves even more. And then they're welcome to use the drug because it helps even post jab. Then we take it, that is for a pre and post exposure prophylaxis, and even with to double up as a third shot if you have taken 2 shots, or as a second shot if you took the other jab, which is only taken once. So it's a safe drug. It's a very safe drug. It's a very reliable drug. It does protect contracting the virus if you're taking it for pre-exposure to up to 84% and more in some clinical trials.
Absolutely. That's what we're recommending is vitamin I. There are other medications that have also shown to be more efficacious than what the regulatory authorities are saying should be used. Many of those very, very expensive drugs that are going to break the bank that we don't have in our country. Gail DHW, totally healed from chronic allergies to natural medicines of flour. Kidneys had packed up from too much use of antihistamines from baby years. Such an important point to raise. And we know that some of these pharmaceutical companies like Johnson and Johnson have been found guilty of their baby powder containing cancer-causing ingredients. These are the same companies that we're trusting their products absolutely blindly for. Princess Moroka, COVID anxiety. What are your thoughts on this, on what people are experiencing? What can you share with us?
Palesa, I'll relate my own story because I suffered from severe COVID anxiety. And I want to agree with or echo what Dr. Mare said earlier when she mentioned that, people would have historic diseases such as cancer and so forth. And I relate because I've also had traumatic experiences before. I've been in a ventilator before because of pulmonary embolism. I've had a near-death experience due to other complications, but I was never ever scared or I had never had anxiety like I did with COVID, and I couldn't understand because I thought I was fine. I thought I had accepted. In fact, I ended up being admitted 10 days later, meaning 10 days after the 10 days of isolation because of anxiety. It was uncontrollable. It felt as if I'm having a heart attack. My heart rate was at 132. So that had to be controlled. And it was tests revealed that my heart was a bit affected and my right lung. However, it was not there was no permanent damage. So it's been that journey of having now to go onto anti-anxiety medication to control that anxiety that one had. And this is a person, I mean, I have never suffered from anxiety before previously. So it is real, it is there. And a lot of people that have had COVID that I know are also having this anxiety and panic attacks.
Absolutely. And then thank you for sharing that. It's a personal story, but it makes such a difference when people who are in the public space share these experiences. So those that are going through it don't feel like they're alone or there's something wrong with them. Hines says recent study in the US showed anxiety being the second highest contributor to C19 deaths after obesity. Certainly very, very interesting there. Phoebe Pup says, I believe Sadelo is referring to people that have been told that the adverse reactions after receiving the jabs is as a result of anxiety or mental distress. Dr. Pinky, Dr. Olivier, we know that people who are taking the jabs their concerns are being minimized. They're told that the adverse reactions are not due to the jabs themselves. And in fact, now we're hearing they're being told that their reactions are due to anxiety or mental distress. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. Before, the high risk was obese, morbidly obese, BMI of more than 40, patients and patients that's anxious. And that's normally also the patients that has diabetes. Now, when you get the jab, you're anxious or you super secure about the fact that you had the jab. There's always a reason for these patients to land in hospital. So I don't really have an answer. I know is a high risk with COVID. Um, even I mean I had two patients that parents has been jabbed fully, and they've been admitted in ICU this week, and they weigh 150 kilograms, and they didn't have the jab, and they went nowhere except to the jabbing site in the middle of the third wave. So I also don't understand how you can have jabbing sites in the middle of the third wave.
Well, there certainly are scientists who are saying that if you jabinate during a pandemic, you're going to force the virus to actually mutate. And certainly there are signals coming out that that's exactly what's going on. Dr. Pinky, can we blame people's adverse reactions from the jabs on mental health and anxiety? Is it okay for health workers to say, whatever adverse effects you're experiencing right now, that's your own fault because you're anxious? Is that okay?
It's not. I've been involved in clinical trials before, and I'm more likely to still be involved in them. We've never seen a clinical trial where the owner of the medication or the investigation product has their hands off. From the time that a person receives the IP or the investigational product, in which case we're talking the jabs here, it is the owners of the maker of the product, the owner of the product, to make sure that the recipients of their own product, which are helping them understand their own product and market their own product eventually, it is their responsibility to make sure that those people are taken care of, because they're really sacrificing. It's a sacrifice, and it's an honorable sacrifice to allow a company to study through you and make their own leaflet, of what the medication is supposed to do and not do. So for the longest of times, whenever we did clinical trials, we were of the impression that every time a patient feels anything untoward, anything different from baseline, that must be recorded as an adverse effect, as an adverse event. It may be a mild or insignificant or inconsequential adverse event, but it's still reported and recorded as such. This time around, people battle to even recommend that they have any new development ever since they have been jabbed. Now, anxiety in COVID, generally in COVID, it is due to a multiplicity of factors. The very first factor is the fact that people come into COVID already being primed to fear. But then in the nature of the viral infection, the virus uses ACE2, as part of the process in which it infects us, in which it gets into the cells or inside the cells. It uses ACE2. And when ACE2 is depleted because of the virus, because ACE2 becomes downregulated when the viral infection is overwhelming. And as a result, ACE2, when it is not there, tryptophan, which is necessary for the production of serotonin, is also depleted. So tryptophan needs ACE2 for its absorption. So instead of us giving patients only the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that we do when they have anxiety during the COVID disease, we also need to supplement them with tryptophan or to give them other vitamins that are going to boost the levels of tryptophan, which then makes serotonin available. And then because serotonin is a feel-good hormone or it's a feel-good chemical, we know that patients will be taken care of from the anxiety aspect. So it's not just that the jab causes or the patient's anxiety causes whatever. It is the natural the spike protein it uses. And we know that the jabs are really about making the spike protein within our bodies. So if you have an overwhelming spike protein presence in our bodies, we've got an overwhelming depletion of the ACE2, and therefore, consequentially, a depletion of tryptophan, and therefore, depletion of serotonin, and therefore, anxiety. So COVID anxiety is not just a figment of the imagination. It's not just that the person is doing it for themselves. It is because the jab makes us produce it makes us produce the spike protein, which mops up all the ACE2, which mops up all which inhibits the formation of tryptophan, which therefore inhibits serotonin. So the jab then should be able to cause anxiety in that sense because it's the spike protein that initiates the whole cycle.
Absolutely. A good science lesson there from Dr. Pinky. We're going to start rounding up with ways forward very soon. But here's a very important question. Gigs Davids, but they're now forcing employers to make it compulsory at work. I'm just asking because I'm not taking that jab. I don't trust it. And of course, there's millions of people in our country and around the world who feel exactly the same way. Princess Moroka, our educators, for example, are being told no jabs, no jobs. We know the SAHRC has come out and said that they will take a position and mediate between employers or landlords who are saying if you don't take the jab, then you're going to lose your job or you're going to be evicted out of the premises. What are your thoughts on this? I think we've just lost her in the stream, but she'll come back in soon. So let's ask the doctors, what is your position? What is the medical, ethical, legal position on saying to people that if you don't take it, you're going to lose your job, you're going to be kicked out of your home? What are your thoughts on this and how should it be addressed? Dr. Olivier?
Me first. I trust on MIRIC, my right to informed consent. They help a hell of a lot. And people don't need to take the jab if they don't want the jab. So they and we actually as CHC needs people that employers forces them to take the jab to make a case. So that we
getting some
case.
Sorry, we're getting some feedback from the background there. I think I've just muted Dr. Pinky's mic and hopefully she's back. All right. Okay, so we don't agree with people being forced. I know MIRIC or MIRIC has informed consent guide that you can request from them so you understand what your rights are. And there are also notices of liability. So what we're saying, the options are to someone who doesn't want to take is one, you can get a medical or constitutional exemption. Not necessary. It would help if the medical is from your doctor, but you can stand in your own rights and say medically, I'm not taking this because of A, B, or C. Put it in an affidavit if you need to, or an email. It's good to have it in writing. Or constitutionally, my right to health, my right to information, it's still in trial until 2023. Use that information to your advantage. It's your body. You need to make that choice. Alternatively, you can a waiver and say, look, I'm not saying no, but I'm going to waiver it until 2023 when the clinical trials are done and when the medium to long term or medium term safety data is out, and then I'll take a decision. Alternatively, option 3 is to issue them with a notice of liability. Depending on your situation, it could be option 1 or it could be option 3, where the person that's forcing you, coercing you, manipulating you, harassing you, or threatening you needs to sign a notice of liability that if anything happens to you, they will take responsibility for it. From a legal perspective, you can open up a case at SAPS if you're being threatened, intimidated, or harassed in any way. You can also get a protection order, but you must make these matters public, because that's where the awareness is growing about what's going on in our country and around the world in terms of informed consent and people being forced. Dr. Pinky, any thoughts on that? What would you say to our educators who are being forced and saying no jab, no job?
It doesn't make sense, because when we started off, we said that this was a vaccine or a jab. Then right in the middle of the process, we found that it's still a clinical trial. And by the nature of it being a clinical trial, you cannot force people to partake in a clinical trial. There is no way you can force people to partake in a clinical trial. And if it's going to come to a point where at the end of it all, it's going to be a point of choosing between our own autonomy, living my life with my sovereignty, because it's going to get to that point where it's going to be difficult maybe to find enough lawyers to defend all of us. It's going to be difficult to find enough advocates to fight for the cause, or it becomes difficult to fight the powers that be because we are limited in whatever we can do. It's going to come to a point where society must now decide right now and start rehearsing the possibility that we may not be able to travel. You may not be able to buy that latest suit that you wanted to buy because it's found in a specific place in the world that we just need to learn to be uncomfortable now, because we don't know how long this is going to take and how far it's going to go before we come back to the reality that this is God's world and we all have a piece of it to live in. So before that time, Shabnam, I think people need to really start taking away the fear, because the one thing, this disease is all about fear at every given level. It's fear that you're going to contract the virus. Then it's fear that they're going to force me to take the jab. Then it's fear about losing the income or not traveling. It's always about fear. It's layered with fear. I think the synonym for the virus really is really fear. And if it rules by fear, we need to decide now that we are not going to allow anyone intimidate, no matter the level of the intimidation. If it means I must die, then so be it. I might as well die and leave this rotten world if it's going to come to that point. Because otherwise we're going to really be, yes, we're going to try and, walk between this tiptoe around the eggshells. But at the end of the day, realistically speaking, this is all about human sovereignty. The right to have my own decisions, the right to have my own autonomy, and the free will to exercise God's given free will for myself becomes a very deeply philosophical discussion or argument. But at the end of the day, what are we raising our children when we take the jab because we want to travel? When you know you don't want to take it. Yes, if you want to take the jab, go ahead and take it. It's your right to take it if you want to take it. But if I feel I don't want to take it, why must I decide I want to take it because somebody's putting a gun on my head to take it? I always say,
Absolutely.
we need to make that choice and teach our children, because we've got the next generation here coming. They are watching each and every step of how we behave, how we respond, how we react, and how we bow down to anything that we're doing. So we need to come to a point where we decide, you know what? These are my principles, my values. This is how I'm going to conduct my life. If it means that whatever, then so be it.
Absolutely.
Because
You
otherwise
make
we're
that.
going to live in perpetual fear.
That's it.
Sorry.
That's how we're living, in a perpetual state of fear and a never-ending lockdown, because it's not about to end anytime soon. And we have to stand our ground, and we have to stand by our rights. Princess Moroka, so one of our organization, Transformative Health Justice, has launched a platform called Surveys. It's an independent platform where patients or victims, families, and healthcare workers can report adverse events of the jabs. www.surveys.co.za. It's independent, voluntary, it's public interest, and the reports that we're getting are very painful and deeply disturbing, that people are going through this and often being told it's not related, or they don't know where to report, how to report. Now, government apparently said there was a compensation system put into place. There's no evidence to suggest that, but it was part of what was used to get consent and buy-in from people. And of course, if it's fraudulent, there is no informed consent. But what's going to happen to the majority poor in our country who are not going to get compensation for the injuries that they're suffering? The majority poor who can't afford medical aid, who can't afford private doctors. What's going to happen to them? What's going to be the impact on them when there's no assistance medically, there's no compensation, there's no justice because you can't afford lawyers, etc.? What are your thoughts on that?
Palesa, under normal circumstances, now without COVID being at the center of the discussion, our people, the most disadvantaged, are always the ones getting the far end of the stick. Now, when it comes to COVID, it is very obvious that just as the other cases, such as gender-based violence, where we have cases that go unreported, where people just have to, be quiet and be fine. They don't have any other option but to accept the situation or circumstance that they find themselves in. That is our reality. And in this instance with COVID, it's no different. It is a fact that we will have those cases that go not mentioned, that are basically shoved under the carpet, and so forth. Because one of the biggest challenges is lack of knowledge, lack of information. Our people do not even know, even the most obvious things that we think a person needs to know, such as if you have been suffered in any way, there are means and ways on seeking help. What is obvious or what may seem obvious to us is not obvious to the people who really, really are in need.
It's going to have a massive impact on the people of our country, not knowing where to report, not being able to access medical treatment or compensation. So please, if you've experienced an adverse reaction or you know somebody who has, tell them about the website, www.surveyors.co.za. Lodge your complaints there. The people have a voice, they have records, and we're able to take these matters forward for transparency, for accountability, and for health. Praveen de Klerk says, assurance claims will also not pay out in the event of occupational disability or dread disease and illness as a result of the jab, because the jab is experimental. Go and check your contracts and policies and go and ask the companies if they're going to cover you if something happens due to these experimental injections. You might be surprised by the answer. Of course, today Discovery has just said that those who choose not to get the jab are going to be treated as smokers. So what does that mean? They're going to increase your premiums if you don't take the jab, and they're going to treat you like a smoker even though you're healthy. So they're going to make money while trying to force you into taking a jab that you're not comfortable taking. And so certainly I believe there's going to be a mass exodus, not only from Discovery, but from other companies that are using similar, intimidation or coercion tactics. And people have to exercise their rights to choose. Let's start rounding up the conversation with ways forward. There was a question here from Janine from South Lake that echoes exactly the direction in which we need to go now. Ladies, may I ask how you see this pandemic evolving and ending? So that's the first question. How do you see this pandemic evolving and ending? And secondly, what is your message to the public, to Olivier?
I think the media is poisoned, and I think we need all local media to tell a message of vitamin I. That's number one. I stopped listening to all radio stations because of all the promotions of the jab. So, yeah, that's number one. We need to get media, radio media in a car, media wherever to talk about vitamin I. That's number one. Number two is we have to start telling people that even in rural areas, there's a lot of doctors available on telecons that will help you for free if you can get hold of ivermectin. So you don't have to take an overdose or not know what you need to take or whatever. We are available for free to help people on ground level. Dr. Pinky,
Thank
do
you,
you?
Dr. Olivier. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
When
I
it comes to
think
Dr. Pinky, how do we end
sure.
this lockdown and what is your message to the public?
How do we end this lockdown? We need to start making more noise. I pray for the public sector specifically because there's more patients there than outside, that they can also receive the opportunity to try this drug out. And if they try it out, they in each and every family, if there's a person who's infected, there are those that must be on treatment, and there are those that must be on pre or post exposure prophylaxis at the same time in that one household. That's the first thing. That is one thing that I think we've tried hand washing. I mean, the first two waves, we've learned that hand washing as well as all the other measures alone are not enough. Therefore, we need a real definitive way of stopping the spread of the virus. So I think if each and every household can lay their hands all at once, if you can say just everyone, every house, just go on to vitamin IV all at once, I think we can really drop the numbers and the viral load dramatically. We can do it the first week
Mm-hmm.
and then repeat it the second or third week and see how far it's going to take us. Just to mess PEP for every person, pre-exposure prophylaxis for every. That is like an ideal. But as to what we're going to see evolving and ending, at the end of this whole thing, I'm an optimist of note. I believe that this disease has come to right the wrongs. We've given too much power to social media platforms. We need to create neutral social media platforms where we can have our voices. We've given too
Mm-hmm.
much power to research engines or search engines. We need competition. They don't have any competition. Practically everything. Academia, we need to ask ourselves, what chapter are we going to put in the textbook of medicine when it comes to this disease? And what are we going to say are the medications that are useful when it comes to to the management of this disease? What are we going to omit there as a genuine help? And what are we late teaching our future graduates or undergrads when it comes to medicine, when it comes to this chapter? Because the chapter is evolving right now as we're speaking. We're busy writing a chapter, and that chapter will be read. And now more than ever, it is the time to really leave a legacy for the future medical students and the medics of this world, to teach them how to research a thing and to treat their patients with truth and with integrity. There's so much more else that needs to be rectified. I mean, I can go to town practically everything. This is now time for us to reset, like what Dr. Wawami said when he talked about a new world order. This is a new world order where we have to reset and review and do things correctly, righting all the wrongs, and know that patients may be they may be our patrons, but they are also human beings with dignity themselves. And we're not just treating veterinary clients here, we're treating human beings with the image of God. So we need to do that with respect and with dignity.
Profound. Thank you, Dr. Pinky. Princess Moroka, how do we restore freedom and humanity? And what is your message to the public?
Thank you very much once again, Palesa. Very, very profound words by Dr. Pinky. And one does agree with all that she said. Myself coming from, let me say, a layman's perspective, being the benefactors or the patients, the general public. The first thing is that we need to find means and ways of empowering people. We need to be very robust in the advocacy work. And our reality, because we need to be realistic as well. The reality that we face is that there is obviously a very resistance regarding vitamin I. And that means anyone who seeks to say otherwise is automatically put under the spotlight, or is victimized in one way or the other, because you are not singing the same tune.
Mm.
So this says to us, those who are able to speak, those who are very, very firm in their belief and principles and ethics, we must see how we come together. Just as Dr. Pinky said, how do we create the very same hype using alternative platforms? The other big challenge that we face is that people are generally scared. People are very scared to even express themselves, you know? We do have a lot of people who, I like relating to my personal experiences. Most people that have advocated vitamin I2 and who are using them, they are afraid to speak about it in public, which is a fact. Now, if we are to progress,
Okay, we seem to have a network issue there, Princess Moroka, unfortunately, but a lovely comment from Daryl Hardy. Susan, stop listening to the Queen. Listen to Princess Moroka instead. Thank you for that, Daryl Hardy. We're going to bring the conversation to a close now with the last comment from Leonora Nell. And she says, brilliant minds and hearts on this panel. Thank you for all your boundless determination, courage, your wisdom, and your compassion. Thank you, Leonora, for that very meaningful comment. And I really could not agree with you more on that comment. So thank you for sharing that with us. And let's exit that comment there to say thank you to Dr. Pinky Ngcakani and Dr. Mare Olivier for joining us on The People's Voice and for being a voice for the people.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Shabnam.
Most welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure to host both of three of these brilliant women in conversation today on The People's Voice. And I want to say thank you to them for joining us, as well as our audiences, viewers, listeners, and supporters around the world. Once again, thank you, Dr. Pinky Ngcakani, Dr. Mare Olivier, and Princess Gabo Moroka for joining us on The People's Voice. Remember to share this conversation across all your platforms. Download the video if you can, re-upload it to alternative platforms. You can tag me on Twitter at Shabnam Palesa Mo. I'd love to hear from you. Remember that people have a right to access information, and remember to ask ourselves every day, what are we doing to make a difference in our country, our continent, and around the world? Until the next edition of The People's Voice, stay informed, stay healthy, stay empowered. Revolutionary peace. Take care. Good night.